Nothing spurs wrong way to say that. Nothing spurs growth and innovation quite like a ruptured economy. New podcasting-specific or podcast-adjacent services are coming at us fast. Are they right for your show? Hello and welcome to another Podcast Pontifications with me, Evo Terra. It's very easy to be dismissive of new products and services as they hit the market. That's just human nature, I suppose. Even happens to me. My job is to try and evaluate some of these tools and technologies and think of whether or not they're going to be helpful for podcasters in the future, but still, something new comes across my desk and my immediate reaction is, well, let's see. I suppose, again, that's just second nature. I try to resist it, but it hits me as well. Compounded with the fact that people are sending me on a pretty regular basis, once or twice a week, "Hey, Evo, have you heard about this new thing? What do you think?" Sometimes I've heard about it. Sometimes I haven't heard about it. And again, quite often I have to tamp down my natural reaction and evaluate it on its merits. Not for what it will do right now for me, but about what it might do for all of podcasting in the future. Now, there have been we're stuck at home, right? We're in the middle of this global lockdown, which is, again, countries are thinking about lifting it, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. But still, we're all in lockdown. The economy's in the toilet, and it's 2008 all over again, 2009 all over again, where the technologies are going to be coming at us fast and furious because smart, creative people who don't have a house full of children or are caring for elderly parents or are worrying about where they're going to make where their next meal is coming from. I don't mean to belittle everybody's problems out there. But some people are going to be figuring out ways around this kind of stuff. And they're coming out with these new technologies specifically for us here in the podcasting space. So rather than me tell you what I think about each one of those technologies, and I'm happy to do that on an individual basis, don't get me wrong, but I don't want to come here on the program and start dismissing or even lauding some of these new tools and services because I'm not sure exactly whether they're going to make it or not. But that's because I don't think it's all that important. What I do think is important is that we relish in this time of coming innovation, this disruptive time we're all about to live through that's just getting started. We need to be able to react quickly when we see new and cool things. More than act quickly, we need to not be beholden to our old processes and techniques, especially as these new things come forward. Very likely, if you're anything at all like me, you've got a set of processes and procedures that you follow that help you get the things done you need to get done so you're not spending all the time working on your show, right? Well, a lot of these new technologies, these new services coming out, are designed to make some of those things better, some of those things faster, some of those things obsolete, perhaps. So when I look at these, and when I think you should look at these new services, the thing you want to ask yourself is, do they fit in your existing chain? Do they replace something in your chain? Do they completely eliminate the need for something in your chain? You don't know. You got to try them. You got to evaluate them. But here comes the second problem. As you evaluate them and you say, no, it's not for me, well, maybe it's not for you in this current edition, the current version of the service and the technology that's out there. So even if it's not for you, your job is to look for promise. Look for something interesting within that service that didn't really work for you, that if they made a few tweaks, might. Because you want to be on the early side of catching that if in fact you can. Not that you have to, but ideally you want to grab it as early as you possibly can. So if you just dismiss it as, that's dumb, I'll never need it, you might miss out on the second iteration of that. So if something looks interesting, it's worth you continuing to look at it, to sign up for their newsletter, to download the software so you get updates. And here's the reality. A lot of them aren't going to continue. A lot of them are going to fizzle out and die. Many of these services are half-baked at best. But if you've missed out over the last 20 years, it's a lot faster to bring a product or service to market, especially if it's software-based. You can do that in weeks, what used to take years. So you're going to see a lot of these half-baked efforts come out, or as they might call them, MVPs, minimum viable products. And a lot of them aren't going to work for you, and a lot of them aren't going to continue. That's the nature of this type of development innovation. Throw something together, see if there's a fit, make it better on the other side. Startup 101 stuff. So a lot of these are going to fail. Here's the trick, though. Your job as the podcaster, as the customer on the end, isn't to pick winners out of these technologies. So if the ability to take your video conference software, to take the content on your video conferences and turn those into a podcast doesn't sound compelling to you like it doesn't sound compelling to me, we don't have to say winner or loser on that. There might be some interesting bits that come out of that are worthwhile. Maybe not to replace what you're doing for your podcast right now, but to make certain elements work better. So if you don't see the need for a transcription service that is charging twice as much as your current transcription service, however, uses much more advanced AI to get things done, if you don't see promise in that, don't necessarily dismiss it. It might actually be something you'll switch to eventually once the kinks are worked out. So again, your job is not to pick winners and losers. Your job is to find interesting bits, interesting innovations that you see today that might impact your podcast tomorrow. And stay connected with them. Keep tinkering. Keep playing. Keep your eyes out for news stories that come out about these companies. It's a little bit of effort to stay engaged, but I promise you at least some of those might be successful. And just like investors are expecting this giant return, so they make lots of bets on lots of things they know are going to fail, but one big return, one big win makes it all worthwhile, same for you. Invest a little bit of your intellectual capacity to following up and staying on top of what these little innovations look like today, because if just one really pops and changes how you do your podcast, it's totally worth your individual investment in time, energy, and intellectual capacity. That's what I think. Now, I know some of you are actually playing around with some of these new tools right now, these new services. I would like to hear what you think about them. Whether you love them, whether you hate them, doesn't really matter. How are you using them? I'd like to hear about it, and I think I want to share those stories here on the podcast with some of the other folks who might listen to it as well. So, as before, if you're playing with a new tool, sit down behind a microphone, record me a minute or two of audio, push that WAV file to Dropbox, and then email me, evo@podcastlaunch.pro. Some other people have emailed me asking how they can support the show. There's really two ways. The best thing you can do to support this program is tell one other podcaster about this program. Pick up the phone, send him an email. Hey, are you listening to Podcast Pontifications? If not, you should. Here's the link. That's the best way. Second best way, go to buymeacoffee.com/evoterra and buy me a coffee. Set it up for a monthly contribution. It's like a couple of bucks. That's easy. Your support goes a long way. Thank you very much for watching. I shall be back tomorrow with yet another Podcast Pontifications. Cheers.